There is a café 4 doors down from the salon where I work, called Sorrel's. For 6 years, I sat in the same corner of it every Thursday at 11:30, because Thursday was my half day, and that hour was the one thing in my week I would not move for anybody. I sat there with my closest friend. I want to tell you about the last time we did that, and about the 7 pieces of brown card I put down on the table between us. This is not really a story about my husband. He did what he did. I have finished with that part, and I finished with it a while ago. This is about the woman who had coffee with me while he was doing it. This is that story. I am a hairdresser. I have my own chair in a small place on the parade, and I have cut Kath's hair for 9 years. She was in my chair a long time before she was in the chair across the table from me. For the first 3 of those years, she was just a client who came in for a color every 6 weeks. That is normal in my job. You can know the whole architecture of somebody's life and still not have their mobile number. Then her mom got ill. She told me about it in the chair, the way people do, looking at me in the mirror rather than at me, and I did the thing you do, which is nothing much. I went to the hospital twice. I sat in a car park with her once for about 40 minutes while she cried, and then she fixed her face in the visor mirror and went back in. That is where the Thursdays started. Her mum died in the November, and by then we had a table. Nobody decided it. We just kept turning up. I know how ordinary that sounds. It is ordinary. It was also, for 6 years, the best hour of my week, and I do not think I am overstating that. There are 3 other names in this, and you will need all of them. My husband was Adam, a heating engineer, and we had been married 11 years. Our daughter is Sophie, who was 5 when the Thursdays started and 11 by the time this happened, and who Kath has known since her first week at school. Kath's own daughter, Ellen, was 24 and engaged, and had asked me to read at her wedding. I had said yes, and then started quietly worrying about it. Kath knew what my mother-in-law said to me at my own wedding. She knew what I earn. She knew about the miscarriage I had after Sophie, and about the second baby that never happened, and she is one of 4 people alive who does. She also knew that I am not, by nature, the one who talks. In a salon you spend all day being told things. By Thursday, I was usually empty of my own news and completely full of everybody else's, and Kath was the one person I put it all down in front of. She used to say I was the only hairdresser in England who never asked about your holidays. She was right, and she never minded doing the asking herself. Sorrel's does a loyalty card. Brown card, 10 little windows, and Marek, behind the counter, stamps it with a purple wren that has the date sitting inside it. 10 stamps, and the 11th coffee is free. We never once cashed one in. I used to drop the full ones in a jam jar on the shelf by the kettle at home, and Kath used to say I was hoarding them like a Victorian, and that stayed funny for about 6 years, which is longer than most jokes last. Adam liked her, in the ordinary way a man likes his wife's friend, and that is worth saying before the rest of it. He used to say she could talk for England, which coming from him was close to affection. The winter her boiler packed up, he was round there the same evening, and he would not take a penny for it. The September before last, Adam got quiet, not cold. Quiet is different from cold, and it is much harder to complain about, because there is nothing to point at. He started going to the gym at 10 at night, which he had never once done in 11 years. He started telling me he was on call for a firm that had never had anybody on call in its life. And he got much better at asking me how my day had been. That last one bothered me more than the other two put together. I want to be honest about what I did with that, because it was not much. I noticed, and then I explained it to myself, and I got very good at the explaining. He was tired. Work was bad. Sophie was 11 and difficult in the specific way that 11 is difficult. Men go strange at 40, and everybody says so. I did not look at his phone. I have been asked that since, quite a lot, usually by people who are certain that they would have. I took it to the table, obviously. That is what the table was for. Some Thursday in the winter, I said out loud that I thought something was going on. I could not tell you now which Thursday it was. I remember the shape of the answer far better than my own question. That I was tired, that Sophie was hard work at the minute, that Adam had always gone odd in the winter. I remember feeling better afterwards. That is the part I would like back. Around then, Kath went off Sorrel's. She said the coffee had gone bitter since they changed the machine, and she wanted to try the garden center out on the ring road, which had a café in the back and did a scone. It was a 20-minute drive each way out of a 2-hour half-day instead of a 2-minute walk. I was quietly annoyed about it for about 6 weeks, and then she went off the garden center as suddenly as she had gone on it, and we went back to our table. I never thought about it again. Why would I? He told me in the March. He sat me down at the kitchen table and told me himself before I found out, and I have given him credit for that ever since. It is a real credit. It is also a much smaller one than it sounds when you are the one being told. There was a woman. It had been going on since the September. 18 months. I asked him 3 things. How long, whether Sophie knew, and whether he was going. He answered all 3 in under a minute, which told me he had rehearsed it, and that was somehow the worst part of that particular evening. I am not going to spend long on the next 4 months, because you can imagine them and because they are not what this is about. We told Sophie together, and we were careful with her, and I think mostly we got that right. He moved out at the end of the June. Sophie stayed with me and went to him at weekends, which she still does. The house stayed mine, the mortgage got frightening, and I picked up 2 extra days at the salon. Somewhere in there I stopped being angry, which surprised me, and I have never entirely got it back. Kath was extraordinary in those 4 months. She came round without asking, which is the only kind of coming round that is any use. She did a shop for me twice when I could not face it. She took Sophie for a night in the April so that I could sleep, and she sat with me one Saturday for 5 hours and let me say the same 6 things over and over, and she never once said I told you so, because she never had. I want that on the record before the rest of it. She was good to me. She was good to me the entire time. It came out in April this year, on a Friday, on my own doorstep, in about 90 seconds. Adam had come to collect Sophie for the weekend, and she had gone back in for her boots, and he was defending himself about something small, and we were having a version of a conversation we had already had about 40 times. Then he said, "It's not like nobody knew." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Kath knew. She saw the 2 of us together in the Aldi car park on Meadow Road, back before Christmas, the first year. She's known the whole time." Sophie came out with her boots. I said, "Have a good weekend, and don't forget she needs her PE kit back," and I waved at the car until it was off the drive, because Sophie always looks. Then I closed the door. I stood in the hallway with my hand still on the latch for a length of time I could not tell you. He had not been confessing anything, he had been spreading it out. He was telling me he was not the only person in this who had kept it from me. He was right, and he knew exactly what it would cost me to hear it. Before Christmas, the first year. We had had coffee on the Thursday before Christmas. I could picture the table. I got the jar down that night after Sophie had gone. It was not that I doubted him. He had no reason to invent that, and every reason not to. It was that before Christmas is not a date, and I have never been able to hold a thing properly until it has a date on it. The Wren stamp has the date in the middle of it. Merrick changes the little rubber wheels every morning. I had years of Thursdays sitting in a jam jar with the dates printed on them, and I had never once thought of them as anything but clutter. It took me until about 2 a.m. to lay them out. I pulled the ones covering the 18 months from that September to the March he told me, put them in order, and counted. 68 stamps. 18 months is 78 Thursdays. 4 of them are accounted for. A week in Spain, a week when Sophie had her tonsils out, and 2 when I had flu. That leaves 6 Thursdays with no stamp on them at all, in a run, in the February and the March, the 6 weeks she wanted the garden center. Here is the part I sat with for a long time. That February, Adam was on a job fitting a system into the flats above the parade, our parade, the one with my salon on it and Sorrel's 4 doors down. 6 weeks of it. There was scaffolding across my window the whole time, and I moaned about the light. I can date it exactly because my birthday is the 9th of February and he was late for my own birthday dinner coming off that job, and because it ran into Sophie's half-term. His van was parked on that street every day for 6 weeks. And for those exact 6 weeks, my friend did not want to have coffee on that street. I went through the whole thing once more to be sure of it. The autumn, somewhere between that September and that Christmas, when Kath stood by her car with her shopping and watched Adam and that woman across the car park. The February, when Kath moved our coffee 20 minutes out of town to a garden center for the 6 weeks his van was outside my salon. The March, when Adam finally sat me down at the kitchen table. 17 months, near enough, of Thursdays. 68 coffees. She bought about half of them. She never told me a single lie. She just let me be the last person to know every Thursday for 1.5 years. I did not phone her. I did not write her a long thing at 2 a.m, which I wanted to, and which I started twice. I texted her on the Tuesday, Thursday, Sorrel's usual time. She sent back a heart, and yes, please, been ages, and she meant it, and I knew she meant it, and I put the phone down on the worktop and stood there for a bit. She got there first. She always did. She had ordered for me, which she also always did, and she was pleased, and she started on Ellen's dress fitting before I had my coat off. I let her finish it. It was about 4 minutes. I have thought since about whether that was cruel, and I have decided that it was not, quite, but it was near. Then I put the cards on the table, 7 of them, in order, in a line facing her. She looked at them, and she did not ask what they were. That was the first thing I learned in that café, and I learned it in about 1.5 seconds before either of us had said a word. I asked her one question. I had decided in the car that I would only ask one. I said, "When did you see them?" She said the October, Meadow Road. She had come out of the Aldi with her shopping, and Adam's van was 3 rows over with him in it, and there was a woman in my husband's passenger seat, and they were not sitting the way 2 colleagues sit. She said she stopped by her boot with the trolley and watched them for long enough to be sure of what she was looking at. Then she put her shopping in the car and drove home. She told me all of that straight away, no hedging, and I have to give her that. Then she said the thing she had clearly been carrying for 2 years, and I could hear that it had been polished, that it was not hers to tell, that she had kept waiting for me to work it out on my own. And then quieter. If I'd told you, you'd have hated me instead of him. That one was true. That is what made it unbearable. I did not shout at her. I am not sure I have ever raised my voice in a café in my life. I said that the 4 months after he moved out were the only reason I was sitting in Sorrel's instead of just deleting her number. She did my shopping. She had my daughter for a night so that I could sleep. I told her I had not forgotten a single bit of it, that it did not cancel out, and that I could not get the two of her to sit next to each other in my head. Then I said the part I could not get round was not the October at all. It was the February. She asked what I meant by that. I said she knew exactly what I meant by that, and she stopped asking. She said, "I nearly told you, twice." I asked her when. She did not have to think about it, and that is what I was not ready for. She said the 7th of March. She said, "You told me you thought there was something going on, and I had my mouth open, and then I said you were tired. I had forgotten that Thursday completely. She had the date. There is no stamp for the 7th of March. There would not be. We were 20 minutes out of town that day, in the back of a garden center, eating a scone, because the coffee at Sorrel's had gone bitter since they changed the machine. She had moved us somewhere his van could not drive past. Then she had sat there and told me I was tired. I do not think she planned any of it in the way that sentence makes it sound. I think she made one small decision at a time, and every single one of them was easier than the alternative. That is how it usually goes, I find. Nobody sits down and decides to do this to somebody. I put the 7 cards back in my bag before I left. Leaving them on the table would have been a performance, and we had already had the conversation. The wedding invitation came 10 days later. Aylin's handwriting on the envelope, and a note from Kath inside saying Aylin still wanted me to do the reading, and so did she. I wrote back 4 sentences on paper because a text felt like getting away with something. I said I was not going to read at Aylin's wedding, and that I would rather Aylin heard the no from me than from her mother. I said it had nothing to do with Aylin, and I hoped the day was lovely. I said I did not want to see Kath for a while. I said I did not know yet whether a while meant for good. She replied once, by text, 2 days later. She said she had told Aylin I was not well enough. I texted back and said no, tell her the truth. Tell her I said no. I do not know whether she did. I stopped following it up, and that turned out to be easier than I expected. Aylin got married in the September. I know because a photograph of it came past me on my phone, put up by somebody we both know, and I looked at it for a bit and then carried on scrolling. That was genuinely all it was. I still go to Sorrel's. It is 4 doors down. I was not going to give up a café. The card in my purse, the current one, had 8 windows filled. I went on my own on the Thursday, and again the Thursday after, and Merrick stamped the 10th one and said, with no idea at all what he was doing, "That's your free one, then." I sat by the window and drank it, and I left the card on the table when I went. He asked me the week after if I wanted a new one. I said no card. Thanks. Before you go, I want to know what you think, and I do read the comments in the first few days. Here is the actual question, and I do not have a clean answer to it myself. If you had seen them in that car park, someone else's husband, and you knew the wife, would you have told her? Or would you have decided, the way Kath did, that it was not yours to say, and that she would get there on her own? Because plenty of people would say Kath was right, and that the person who tells you is never forgiven either. If this kind of story is what you came here for, the ones people do not usually say out loud, subscribe. There is a new one every week.